thank you for joining us on the next episode of Small Business Chat. Today, we're talking about Sweden just trademarked its own name. I don't know how that's possible, but they did it with the European Union, also known as the EUIPO. We got also to talk about just if it's possible to trademark a text like Beyonce's new name, Texas Hold'em, for her song. Is that even possible? Would it be geographically descriptive? Whole lots of fun things to talk about today. And joins me, as always, Matt. How's it going?
It's awesome, man. I'm sorry. We're just reading this article on why that they're actually we get a chance to see each other for the first time, and like because our studios are now across the hall from each other, and we can
Right,
see each other
right.
through our glass doors. But our studios, they sound all official, right? But reading the reason why, like I was sitting here in the meeting this morning talking about other things, like, well, what your Swedish meatballs and all that sort of stuff, are you not going to be able to say this anymore? And then you you read the article as to why they're actually trademarking this. And you go, is this a trademarking issue or is this just a stupid freaking person issue? I'm sorry, do you remember why they're trademarking it when we just read the article a minute? Or do you want me to take this one?
Well, it looks like they're trying, it's something to do with tourists,
There are
like
eight
coming into
different
the country.
Swedens around the world. Who knew? There are a couple in Germany and all that sort of stuff. And I just picture these people getting off the plane in Germany going, "Oh, I'm so glad we finally got to get our bucket list trip to Sweden done." And you're like,
Hmm.
okay, how effing stupid are you to basically go to like not Sweden? I mean, is this a major issue? Are they getting like people like calling them from like Beijing, China that showed up at the Swedish Danish shop and like we're like, holy crap, we're not actually in Sweden. No one's looked Swedish around here at all. I mean, that's the reason why they're okay. I'm gonna back it back a step. We're gonna take a step down. We're gonna maybe try decaf next week. But I mean, so
Well, you had half and half. I saw that this morning when
oh,
you talked
oh yeah, but it's we're
about.
ready to go. But anyways, so getting back on like the relevance and all that sort of stuff, and then we'll touch on Beyonce and all that sort of stuff. But can a trade so Sweden has applied to trademark Sweden, which by the way, we didn't look it up like for what goods and services, because trademarks are goods and services specific, maybe tourism, but
Hmm.
Sweden with the European Trademark Office. Am I saying that right? Somewhere in Europe.
Yes, the EUIPO.
It is wild. We can actually look at each other for the first time in a while. So we can look at each other and I can try to like bust you up and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so they've applied for it, I guess, so they can be the only ones that use Sweden, probably in reference to tourism or something like that. But then so the question would become in a larger context, will this start a trend if they get this? Because now we have a business person that's coming in. And again, we have to be very careful how I say this because we got to make sure that we're able to boost this podcast. But we have a business person that's coming in to be our leader. So notice I don't know say any, names or anything. But and is this something else that he may consider? Like, could you actually trademark the US? Could the US actually trademark the United States and then only allow it to be used by certain licensees? So a lot of stuff to unpack here this morning. Pretty cool, huh? What do you think?
I think I mean it just all depends on what their aim is and what they're planning to do with it. My big question is anytime any Sweden is used at all, do we have to pay certain what I mean, normally it's known as, companies that own certain names or trait like logos, et cetera, et cetera. So how is this even operated as a company? What company would own such a property?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So, I mean, okay, so the things that we talked about earlier were like, okay, so let's assume for a second. So we have to step back. Just by way of history, let's tell the people how some of these things sometimes work. So years ago, before the tequila thing, we were involved. The trademark company back when it was a law firm. We happen to represent um, several winemakers from California that were being effectively sued by a French conglomerate that said that they were improperly basically saying that their product was champagne. And because only champagne can come from the Champagne region of France. And I can't remember the name of that group. At the end of the day, they were proved to be right. And, so that's why to this day, when you buy something like Mum Napa sparkling wine, it's not called Mum Napa champagne. I can remember back when it was called champagne. And, anything that's produced in the United States, it has to be called, I believe, sparkling wine. It can't be called champagne. So we start talking about, sort of a basis for geographic, descriptive terms, which normally aren't registerable by anyone, in the absence of acquired distinctiveness. And I don't want to put anyone to sleep. But sort of the champagne thing was one of the first things I saw where they actually trademarked a geographic region in essence, like a certification mark. Like the champagne comes from Champagne in France because only sparkling wine from Champagne can be called, I know it sounds redundant, champagne. Now, the nice people up in Idaho for years have been able to do this because they have a certification mark for Idaho potatoes. If you've ever want to see it, go to your grocery store and, basically look at a sack of potatoes. And if they're from Idaho, they'll have a certified Idaho because Idaho grows the greatest potatoes in the world. We all know that. It's great, great potatoes up in Idaho. So then you fast forward to what was mentioned in our meeting this morning, which was, at some point, tequila went through the exact same thing. Patent and Trademark Office, like about, I think, 8 or 9 years ago, just mysteriously started almost spontaneously canceling trademarks that had tequila in it. And what you found out is now that you're in a liquor store, tequila is largely called, what is it called? Blue agave stuff? I know you're an alcoholic like me. So what is it called?
I don't know, actually. I'm not an alcoholic, so
What?
I don't know. I wouldn't know to confuse me
I'm
with somebody
sorry.
else who
Enjoy
also
it. I didn't mean to be insulting. Enjoy a good drink from time to time.
Yes, yes, there we go. That's my description.
That's better. Yes, I shouldn't be like that. But I mean, it's like so. It's called like blue agave or blue agave juice or
Yeah, I think
something. I
Ian
don't know.
mentioned that this morning. I think it's blue agave, yeah.
Something blue agave. So what that means is tequila that's not produced in Mexico or in like the tequila region of Mexico. And so they did the same thing with champagne. And the Patent and Trademark Office, I think, did something more unique on this one is they went out and I thought like spontaneously started canceling tequila trademarks. So if you had like tequila that's made here in the United States, it has to be called like blue agave stuff because you're not allowed to call it tequila. So we set up these couple stories between Idaho baked potato to tequila from Mexico to champagne from France just to sort of understand like okay, so where's the Swedish government going with this? Um, One of the things that I can think about would be is like okay, so growing up, one of my all-time favorite little things to eat were Swedish meatballs. Not a joke. My mom would make Swedish meatballs. Now, when you make them at home, my mom, I think it's a cheat, sorry, mom, but I mean, I think it's just basically you buy like your standard frozen beef meatballs and whatever. You get grape jelly, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe put something else in there and you just heat them up and it's Swedish meatballs, you know, like, and such. And then I know I can remember as a child having Swedish pancake mix in the pantry. Have you ever seen that? Swedish pancake mix?
Of course, I love it.
Yeah. Oh, seriously? Okay,
I've
cool.
tried it before.
So
It's really
those are the
delicious.
two products that I can think of that actually have the name
What
Sweden or
what
Swedish in it. What do you
what
got?
about Swedish fish? Like just the
Oh, excellent
candy?
point. So, yeah,
Yeah.
the candy. Yeah. Because I've never liked that because I'm more of a chocolate guy. Are you a
Yeah.
chocolate guy or a
I'm
Swedish?
more of a chocolate guy than
Yeah, we're
just
chocolate
specifically
guys,
like
right?
a sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. We like a good chocolate, which ain't good for us. But that's where, no, it's not even another podcast. Just don't eat sugar. Anyways, but Swedish fish, yeah, another fantastic example. Like, do you actually think they're from Sweden? I don't think so.
I let me actually look that up. Keep
They
talking and
may
I'll find
be.
that
You don't
answer.
know. I've never, but but anyways, so you start getting to the point that, okay, so the question becomes is, has Sweden just started a trademark, I don't want to say trademark war, but a trademark trend, which if a country can actually protect its name, are they then going to be in a position whereby, in order to use that name, just like champagne, tequila, Idaho baked potatoes, you have to get consent to do it. Now, and then the question draws like, are they going to start a robust licensing program? So who makes Swedish fish? Did you see?
Swedish fish were actually made by the Swedish company Malcalco in the 1950s. However, they were developed specifically in the North American market. They became popular in the U.S. during the 1960s and 70s, but it doesn't look like they were actually made in Sweden.
So and
Like
then so you
now.
have all these and say there's so many intersecting things with trademarks and commerce right now that we could bring into bear, which is like, is there going to be a licensing program? Are Swedish fish, here we go, generic for a type of candy that no longer does it describe something that's from Sweden because maybe they've been made in a factory in Alabama for the last 40 years. And then so we say, no, no, it describes the type of thing. Like when we were talking about like New York pizza, is that actually descriptive of a pizzeria that's from New York, or is it an actual style of pizza? Someone would argue, well, it's a big honking slice, the type you fold over and you got to lean over so it doesn't get on your white t-shirt. You know what I'm talking about. But anyways, but but that no, no, you learn how to eat. It's like when you live in New York City, they teach you how to eat a slice. So I start
Mhm.
talking like I'm from New York City again. But that's how you lean over so it doesn't get on your clothes when you're actually biting in and you fold it over. But when you fold it, a little bit of grease is going to come out of the bottom by the crust because it creates a vessel through which it goes through. Anyways, I digress. How to eat pizza from Swedish fish. But I mean, so then you have all these questions like, could it be generic and all that sort of stuff? But the question is going to be is how far does Sweden go? By the way, I was fascinated with how many people already confuse Sweden in our office with Swiss. And I'm like, you all know it's a different country, right? I was like, seriously, people, buy
You
a
think
map.
Swiss chocolate is Swiss
It's a
cheese?
different country. They're like, oh my God, yeah. What do you think they're going to be like? I've never heard of Swedish cheese, but I'm sure they have it. But they're like Swiss cheese or like Swiss Army knives. I'm like, that's Switzerland.
Yeah, I
Different
haven't
country.
thought of. I mean,
Sweden.
Swedish meatballs are the
Sweden.
only ones I can even think of that remind me of Sweden.
I think, and I may be really wrong on this. I thought the Swedish flag, although I may be confusing it with Norway, I thought Sweden was blue and yellow, and Swiss is obviously white and red. But Norway is in there too, and I'm thinking maybe it's Norway's flag I'm thinking of. But anyways, so the question coming back full circle to this, because we're 15 minutes into this, diatribe is, can you actually, this is the first time we've ever seen a country that's actually gone out and attempted to do this. So if they are then successful, I mean, the rule generally here in the United States is what? You can have US or United States as part of your trademark, but because generally it's considered to be geographically descriptive or descriptive, your goods and services are provided or whatever, you just have to disclaim it, right? Well, could we see in the next 2 or 3 years a complete shift in the United States, wherein if you put in USA or US, you have to go to some sort of, I don't know, presumptively the US Patent and Trademark Office, new wing, or whatever, and just to sort of pay them sort of like a tax or a fee, and we're looking for it. Like, and again, now that we have a new administration coming in, and we just within the last 24 hours knows there are going to be two new businessmen, Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, who have been appointed by the incoming administration to be head of it's Dodge Department of Governmental Efficiency. And remember, Elon Musk walked in day one to Twitter, or maybe it was day two, and was just like, "See half of you, bye." It's been nice. Enjoy your time off, and such. Fired half of Twitter, so I'm sure there are a lot of federal government employees that are looking around going, "Okay, this wow." But then on the flip side, if you're looking at efficiency, and both these two guys, I mean, whether you like them or you're not, they're brilliant business people because they got a lot of money. So it works. So I always think that, scoreboard. So wait, whatever. And so if you gave them the opportunity for the governmental efficiency office to say, hey, here's a new possibility that you could actually derive revenue, protect the US as a trademark, and then have a licensing program, which is effectively a de facto new tax. And maybe the answer is, and if, the incoming administration is all pro US, like, and they have been very on the campaign trail, and we've talked about this, very pro US business. So maybe you get a free license if you're a US business, but if you want to use US or something and you're manufacturing your stuff abroad, I actually sort of liking this now that we're talking about this. I think it's a great thing. You have to pay a handsome licensing fee. So if you're going to basically, obviously you can't use made in the USA because I think that may even be a certification mark, by the way. I think it is.
Hmm.
But if you put anything USAA on your product and it's not 100% US based, the Department of Commerce and the US Patent and Trademark Office is going to charge you, in essence, a surtax or something like that to actually sell to us, our wonderful people here in this country. And the more I'm talking myself into this, I'm like, all right, Sweden, let's do this. That sounds like that's just not a bad idea. But
Right?
it's
Do
fascinating
you
that the
think more
Swedish are going to
countries
do
should do
this.
this?
I don't know. We're going to see what, happens. I mean, I'm going to be fascinated to see how the European Trademark Union or the European Intellectual Property Office, I think is where they fought for it, Europa, I think, or Europe, I think I pronounced that correctly, Europa. Well, anyways, see how they actually deal with it. Um, because I can't imagine that an entire country, there's got to be some pretty good lawyers. And you look at an entire country, like if you look at the United States, obviously we have fantastic lawyers in this country. I mean, there's got to at least be like six of them, right? And with all the lawyers are, there's six. But an entire country files for a trademark, you have to think that they had an opinion from somebody that says we're going to be able to get this thing through, right? I like the eye contact, by the way. This is actually sort of
Right,
really
right.
nice. Although you're
You
like
set up.
Wilson right now over your monitors, you're like Wilson from Home Improvement. I can only see like your
Is
eyes, and then you're
that
below. Yeah,
better?
there you go. I can see your face now. But it's funny. But it'll be. I think it's something that I think that all countries are going to, and especially countries that are looking to anytime derive more revenue or basically make sure that people don't, trademark certain things. Like Sweden, I would think it always starts with a small thing, right? And so I would consider them to be a smaller country. But think about these huge tourism, destinations like, Australia would come to mind. I'd be like, holy crap, almost immediately. If I'm Australia, I'm, well, where the hell Australia would file a trademark application for their own country. But, like
They trademark
US,
the kangaroos. Yeah.
yeah. Do you know, have you ever talked to anyone from outside of the country? Actually, knowing you, maybe not. But have you ever talked, do you actually know where the top like tourist destinations that people like outside of the country want to come to the US and actually see from all the people I've ever talked to? What do you think people want to see? It could be cities or places. What do you think?
In the US or outside the US?
People like people who would be outside the US, like foreigners to us. What do they want to come to the US and see?
I would say probably New York City.
Then that's number one answer. Yep.
That's number
That
one.
I've ever, in my experience, I've seen. What's like, you give me my top two or three or four.
California because of Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's up there in the top three or four. Yeah. Yeah.
Number
What do you
two,
got down?
though, Texas? Maybe
No, I've
Texas.
never I've never heard them say Texas. But I'll go and tell you the one that always surprised me because it is so when I've talked to cab drivers around the world and people that like when we talk about world travel, they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from the United States or whatever." And such. I'm like, "You ever been?" They're like, "Oh yeah." And they've either been and like, "Here what I want to see," or "This is my list of things." Consistently, the Grand Canyon
Oh,
appears.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they
And
want to
Las
see New
Vegas
York.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, Las Vegas is actually on there, and they want to see, but really it's like New York, and I think it's usually by about the third thing they're like, and we want to see the Grand Canyon because our Grand Canyon is world famous. And again, have you all been out there yet?
I have not been there yet. My dad has. I've never been
It'll
myself.
change your life. And again, when you go, and this is to anyone out there that's listening, please don't just take a day trip out from Las Vegas and spend the night at one of the great hotels at the Grand Canyon. Yes, they're a little bit older. They're not as fancy as some of the other places, but around 5 o'clock every like in the summer, all the tourist bus leaves, and that the Grand Canyon Village is absolutely at the south rim is just packed like Disney World for the entire day. But around 5 o'clock, all those buses pull out and it's like you have almost the entire Grand Canyon, maybe with like 1,000 or 2,000 people that are staying at the hotels to yourself. And when you watch sunset over the Grand Canyon, yeah, it's just one of those times that you want to have, from me, my perspective, have a glass of wine, be with the one you love, or friends or whatever, just even by yourself, and just sit there and watch the sunset for 35, 40 minutes. And you just like, it is one of the greatest sunsets you'll ever see. West Coast of Florida, West Coast, so obviously California, and the Grand Canyon, best places to see sunsets in the world. And you just got to do it. But anyways, I digress.
On my
So
bucket list.
yeah, put it on. It's really awesome. Get there sooner rather than later. It's awesome. But back to this. So again, you're talking about like, so this, so then the next thing would fall, and now I'll start drawing it into our friend, well, our friend, I've never met her, but again, impressive career, Beyonce, right? Like she's got that new song out. Well, it's not too new, but still, it's like Texas Hold'em, and I can't remember. I know the word Texas is probably featured in it and all that sort of stuff. So. Well, if the US government comes out and says it can actually trademark its own name, how far behind would be our states in saying, well, I can trademark the name too? And so could someone like then Taylor Swift pause? Taylor
Oh,
Swift.
we're gonna have to put them both in here now.
So we get like like four people listen to this podcast, and we like mention Taylor Swift, like 4,000 people will listen to the podcast. So we have a rule, we just automatically mention Taylor Swift, but it's relevant because could artists then go on like Beyonce or Taylor Swift do a song like Texas Hold'em or something like that without getting a license from Texas or like now. And so the question, it starts being the sort of this whole domino thing, which is like, okay, well, if Sweden is successful, who will be next in being successful? And so does it transition being from being geographically descriptive or in some cases geographically misdescriptive? In other words, if I just say my products are made in the US, I typically can't trademark that because I'm just telling you a feature or function of my products. And we all know you can't trademark descriptive terms. But then if they lock up Sweden or if we lock up the United States and it becomes more of a situation that you can actually license that and such. Now, again, whether you have to disclaim it or not, we're getting into subtle nuances of, U.S. trademark law. But then, if Sweden's able to do this, do we get into a money-making venture for the United States? And if we get into a money-making or a licensing venture for Sweden, the United States, how long is it until our states figure that out as well? And then you start transitioning from a day where we were geographically descriptive to you have to go to sunbiz.org, I think it is. I can't remember, Secretary of State in Florida. But anyways, and again, everyone does business in Florida. Great job, sunbiz.org or whatever. Great website. Very easy to do business in the state of Florida. Recommend it to everyone. But I digress. To then get like that, maybe it's a $10 licensing fee a year or something that you have to go and pay them to effectively use Florida. So like we've talked about in our thing, Florida Tan, if there's a company called Florida Tan or, whatnot. And then take it even a step further. I'm sorry, now I'm going, it's actually the original thing was Palm Beach Tan, which is where I come from. The county is named Palm Beach. Everyone always thinks, by the way, Palm Beach means the island of Palm Beach, Wilson. Um, it means basically Palm Beach is the actual full county. So if I say I come from Palm Beach, I'm not just saying where Mar-a-Lago is. I'm saying that it's a large county in the state of Florida. But then if Florida's allowed to trademark their name and then do a licensing program, then why don't the counties? Now I'm thinking about this. One of my buddies from high school is in charge of the Bureau of Tourism in Palm Beach County. And like, so how long is it before he wakes up and he's like, wait a minute, can we actually trademark Palm Beach County? So then someone who has Palm Beach Tan as a business, they actually have to license it from the actual county. I mean, this could really start a major domino effect in the world. Now, all this assumes one simple assumption. They've applied for a trademark.
They haven't got it yet.
Boom. And we do know, do we ever see trademark rejections every once in a while?
All the time.
Well, and again, and it's just a matter of, it's you have all the, the trade. It's like sometimes it's almost like the patent and trademark office. I think it's their job just to issue rejections. But once again, we'll see how many rejections they issue after Elon Musk and Ramaswamy get through with government efficiency. And I'm not making too much light, but I sort of am. But I mean, we'll see. But I think that, it'll be fascinating to see this domino that's started by Sweden and the effect that could happen. So again, coming back full circle, we've gone on about 30 minutes about this is I think it's massive news because if they're able to get this through, wouldn't you agree? Like, why couldn't the US just do it, right? It's automatic. If US can tell the US Patent and Trademark Office to do whatever they want, do it. I mean, I don't see how that wouldn't work,
Going
you
back to
know?
my original question earlier, like like usually I'm just so used to companies owning trademarks. How would a country put down on the ownership information of a certain company? Or like who would own it?
So you're talking about like who would actually own the actual trademark USA?
Yeah.
Um,
Or
I
for
think
Sweden.
I actually think, well, I mean, I didn't look the Swedish trademark application. I would assume would either be it would be one of the branches of the actual government that owns it, and and I think, and I may be mistaken on this, but like so, for instance, um, I thought the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office had recently tried to trademark their logo because bad actors, we all know this, there are bad actors in the trademark world. And, there are literally companies out there that will send, you know, um, invoices to people that have trademarks like, oh, renew your trademark today, even though the trademark's not due for renewal. And they'll call themselves like the U.S. Trademark Office. And technically, that's not really a thing. There is a trademark office in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but it's not called the United States Trademark Office or the U.S. Trademark Protection Office or something. And then they'll actually put the logo of the USPTO to seem official. and they're like, oh, $1,500 and whatever. And if the person pays it, hey, that's great. Or there's the other one that we used to see, we saw for years, and we would always advise anyone who would listen, you get these letters, from like, the Federal Trademark Office, and it's always someplace in like Kazakhstan or something like that, someplace I don't even know existed. And like but if you once you transfer money there, they've got your money, and
Right.
such. And so I think the Patent and Trademark Office to try to beef up possibly their enforcement efforts in the misappropriation of their logo, and rightfully so, I think got a trademark. They actually were able to trademark their logo. So I would think that possibly the government organization, in this case, the Department of Commerce and Undersecretary like this, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, would probably have a good argument as to why they're the one that should actually hold. It would mean that they would have to start a whole new division, like the division of U.S. intellectual property rights or whatever within the patent and trademark. It makes sense to me. It should be with them, right? And then they would just hold it for the U.S. government, but then also be in charge of licensing and all that sort of stuff. Again, assuming. And by the way, it's completely within the power of the U.S. government to do this,
Hmm.
because yes, there are statutes that talk about geographically descriptive, but the Patent and Trademark Office, although they can't override a statute passed by Congress with administrative regulations, they can promulgate administrative regulations that could potentially allow them to do this, or they could just go back to Congress. And I think that there's a there's a committee called it's in the Judiciary Committee subcommittee on courts and intellectual property. And I think if they recommended, they could put this statute through if they saw Sweden, and they could literally make it a statute. They bring this to, they could codify this in a statute. So they could just do an end run. So if the Patent and Trademark Office general counsel says we can't do this, but all you would have to do is go through courts and intellectual property subcommittee through the U.S. House of Representatives, and there would be any opposition to this because again, look at the administration that's coming in and say, oh, this is the way that we can actually license it out, and they could just carve out exception for the United States and such. Then you would have more issues at the state level, like I already went through,
Hmm.
but it's absolutely possible to do that. So anyone who mentions the United States, rather than actually it being geographically descriptive, it could be an exception to the geographically descriptive statute, and then they could actually start licensing this out. The other nice thing, began with you, some really good things about this could actually come about because then it would give the Patent and Trademark Office one additional refusal and the ability to actually then enforce at a level never seen against, if we're going to be gung-ho all USA, let's bring things back to the USA, which that's what our tax policies are clearly, heading towards. And the current administration is talking about tariffs as well. This to me would be one more arm of that. The more I talk myself
Right.
into this, which would be is like, okay, and so if you're making something that is, two-thirds made outside this country, and I don't want to make, well, we all know there's been jobs outsourced to Mexico over the years and other places. And if you're going to do that, well, you can't use made in the USA. Well, how are you going to, enforce that? No one goes after them. We haven't said the Department of Justice should go after them or anything. Well, why not make that a new department of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and allow, whatchamacallit, Elon Musk and Ramaswamy, when they get in, to basically look at the efficiency of all this and hand in hand with the current administration, excuse me, the incoming administration's policy, just don't allow people. So if we're going to all buy USA, or you want to have that, premium associated with buy USA, don't allow anyone else. Like it's almost like a certification mark for USA goods that can be controlled by the Patent and Trademark Office. And where would you get that? I'm confident that they could find efficiencies, just like we do in any company. Anytime we, go around, maybe we don't look to lay people off in larger companies, but what we do is we do say is, okay, well, we've just programmed away part of your job because we have a computer programmer that can do what you 2,000 people do. Like I've said for years, and I don't mean this as an attack against the Patent and Trademark Office. There is software out right now that I think that can eliminate most Patent and Trademark Office examining attorneys' jobs overnight. Patent and Trademark Office has just never implemented it for whatever reason. I don't quite understand why. And that's not to say anything about the great examining attorneys at the Patent and Trademark Office. It's just that what they do is at this juncture can be automated by AI and otherwise. And they go, oh, no, it can't be. Trust me, it can be because we have software that can do it. And when our software has done it for 10 years and such. And so when you get down that, so I'm not saying then remove any of those jobs. The simple answer is convert those jobs to licensing attorneys, and just convert their jobs and then basically make up a whole new vision in the Patent and Trademark Office that then protects the USA name. So if you want to be, made in the USA, that's fine. but then have these attorneys then say, well, you have to have a license, and not to mention you can only, make it in the USA. And, again, combine that with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which we know already has the ability to stop infringing goods from coming into the United States. Well, trademark USA, trademark US to the Patent and Trademark Office, convert some, automate some of the functions, the examination of trademark attorney, excuse me, of trademark applications, move them over to an enforcement division that works hand in hand with US Customs and Border Patrol. Don't allow anything into the United States. First of all, there's the easiest pickup of all. Maybe they already do this, but anything that's coming into the US that has a made in the US sign on it or whatever, you already get what I'm saying, right? Because I can see
Yeah.
your eyes like you're smiling. Like that should be a big sign that it's not US made in the US. If it's being imported into the US, slam it down. No, you can't do it. Or if you're going to do it, charge people who actually are manufacturing stuff in the US like $1 for that annual license, right?
Right.
But if you want that made in the USA, moniker or whatever, that's up to the administration to determine what they would want to do with it as we, sort of make up this plan for them. But then it's sort of like, you can either charge out the hilt and then use that to fund small business programs here in the US for actually stuff that's made in the US, which I think would be badass. So in other words, hey, okay, if you don't want to be made in the US, that's fine, but we're just charge you premiums. Call it a tariff, call it whatever you want. But in order to use that, if you want to come in through the Customs and Border Protection with our now new section of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office that's looking at this, okay, we're going to charge you, $10 million. Dollars. And no, I'm not kidding. Like it's going to be a lot, 10 million, 20, 30 million. And then use that money to fund additional small businesses here in the USA for everyone. And so everyone wins in that regard. But again, all thanks to Sweden that started this whole thing. Coming back to our Beyonce, skipping completely back to that. If, however, like the Royal allowed to, trademark things at the Texas level, at the Florida level, and all this sort of stuff, will you ever be able to see a song again like, Texas Hold'em or something like that? Would an artist be prohibited from doing something like that? And I think that's the other thing that you have to just be a little bit concerned about because you have to have artistic freedom, and we don't want to go that crazy with respect to the whole trademarking thing because I think it has to be readily available to people. But I do think it prevents if Sweden gets this done, I actually think it's sort of cool. And everything that we just sort of, or at least I sort of rambled through, I think it'd be really, really awesome for the United States. Again, build out a whole new, thing. And I'm confident with, Elon Musk, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Ramaswamy, right? He ran for,
Ramaswamy, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, he ran for the nomination. I always thought he was a little bit like, out there when he was actually doing the debates, but gotta give him props. He's a wealthy businessman. He's a self-made man. He knows what he's doing. So if you're going to create efficiencies, one of the things you do with creating efficiencies is help them pay for themselves even more. And here's an opportunity that we've just highlighted in the Patent and Trademark Office, cut down on some of the efficiencies, make some computer programs that actually make some more efficiencies. And I'm not saying lay anyone off, convert them over to this other thing. And the Patent and Trademark Office is already a money-making organization for the United States government, as is obviously the Internal Revenue Service.
Right.
But give them the ability to actually even make more, through doing what I'm talking about, through licensing programs and all that sort of stuff. But then also then there's a check and balance, which is to make sure that, okay, well, if you're going to put USA on something, it better be damn good. It better be made in the USA and, represent us.
Hoorah!
You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right. Well, I think that we should end it off on that, Matt. Go USA. We're ready to see your trademarks roll through. And speaking of that, this episode is sponsored by the Trademark Company. If you are a country in need of trademarking your country, you know who to call. The trademark.
Oh.
Go to www.thetrademarkcompany.com and talk to one of our live agents. I'd be sure we'd be happy to help you. Uh, but that does it for us. Thank you for everyone that listens to these podcasts once a week. We really appreciate you. And we hope to see you on the next one. And as always, we hope you have a great day. Thank you.